Do you want me to test the mic outside and see if it's a Simon problem or a problem?
Sure.
Yeah, I can. I don't know what else to do. So...
All right. So, Brian, can you hear us?
You guys hear me? Testing, 1, 2, testing.
Mine is, yeah.
This is cranked up really high.
Any...
What about the gain on here?
Oh, I can hear you now, Simon.
Oh, you can?
Yes.
Gain pattern, that should be fine.
You want to go back to try the old audio?
We could try it, but certainly.
Let's just try it. And then let's
tweak.
Well, feel better.
Yeah.
Let me see what they're doing in there.
Brian, you hearing us?
I can hear you guys. Can you hear us?
Nope. we can't hear you.
I can hear both Simon and you guys.
Okay. So I'm going to switch my audio. Okay, Simon, I just switched our audio output. Try one more time. See if we can hear you.
All right. As I was saying to Brian, can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you. Great. All right.
Oh, okay. So now I'm going to mute because you don't want to hear my cough.
Yes, thank you. Okay, I think all systems are go. We're currently recording. Today's going to be a different type of planning meeting than we've had in the past for ONOS. And just to go through it. So this is going to be a planning meeting only for the ON.Lab developers that are working on ONOS. Okay, this is not going to be trying to get all of the people in the community aligned and into Jira. And so we've kind of reached a point in our growth where we have to separate these processes. And there is another process that has to be put in place for the rest of the community and getting projects started, tracked, and into the system. And then ON.Lab is going to have to plug into that, but we haven't defined that one yet. And what's been happening is as we grew, we tried to do both of those things at the same time. And so we ended up not doing either of them well when we get too large. So I think we need to now separate those and expand our community process for tracking projects. Okay, so that will be coming soon. So today is all about tracking what the ON.Lab team is going to be doing in ONOS for the next sprint. And so if that's not your interest area, feel free to go and you don't have to be involved. But for those of you that are involved with development activities for ONOS, please stay.
Can you make your screen a little bigger?
Yep, that's a good idea.
Underneath the insert menu item, there's a docs Zoom.
Oh, how about this one right here?
That's good.
That's good. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. So just to be clear, so these are the folks that are working on ONOS. The rest of the folks at ON.Lab are working on chord variations or community work or Mininet primarily, and those are planned in other venues, not in this one. So again, primarily ONOS.
I'm sorry, can I make a comment?
Please.
Just wait.
Yep.
Go ahead.
If you want to make a comment on that.
I don't think we want to say just the ON.Lab developer. For people who are working at ON.Lab full time, like John and Shoal, they should be part of the sprint. Right?
Sure. Yeah, if they're working on ONOS. Yep.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, I included.
I think you're right, but having that list clear is a good thing, right? So that you know who those people are and
John's on it. Okay.
Sure, that's what.
What's that?
Sure.
John,
Oh, and Shoal, yeah.
Whoever's working here pretty much full time from.
Okay, so we can update that. Okay, so so on to point two. One of the things that we decided in looking back at the sprints that we've been having is we aren't doing a good job of managing interrupts. And so one of the things we want to do during this iteration is to handle interrupts well, which means anything that's going to cause us to change the scope of activities for what we sign up for, we want to have a separate discussion about, and then have a well thought out change of scope done, right? Because otherwise we just keep adding things into the sprint, and then we get to the sprint having added another third items, and we haven't done what we said we were going to do. And so we're trying to get away from that. Okay. Another thing that we agreed is that we were doing this in a way where we weren't really being as accountable as we could have been. So the goal in this is that when we agree that we're going to do particular stories during this iteration, then we're also going to be accountable as a team to get them done. So if anyone disagrees with that, now would be the time to stand up and say, sorry, I'm not going to be accountable. Okay. All right. So we're going to spend time at the beginning of this meeting to take input, all the places that have opinions on how the engineering team should be spending their time, so that we get all of the different possibilities for priorities aired out, right? And then as a group, we will prioritize them, and then we can all be in sync going forward into the sprint. Okay, so we'll have a 1 to n priority backlog of work that we're going to be accountable to do. All right, somebody's highlighting for me. Oh, Utah is, okay. Okay, so, and then we're also going to assign first story, so we understand what each person's working on as their first story. We're also going to agree on Scrum teams, but I have to wonder if we really need multiple Scrum teams, given that we don't have a huge group doing this. But we can talk about that when we get to that point. And then we're going to agree to do a daily stand-up and stick to it, so that we just get in the habit again of quickly giving updates on what we're doing and what's in our way, and keeping everybody in sync on what's happening. Okay, so I've recruited a little bit of help. Sandhya is over here. Sandhya's going to start helping with the product owner and helping us with the backlog, stay in sync. So I'll be working with her, and she and I will try to do a much better job than we've been doing of that in the past. And I'm sure, given that she's on it now, we will. Okay, and so the last thing I want to say is, again, there's a lot of things happening in the community, and we would love to be tracking all of that work and helping the community pick the things to do. But that's not the goal of this meeting. There is going to be something else that has to be set up to take care of that, but this isn't it. Okay. So next thing we're going to do is talk about all the possibilities for priorities for the engineering team. But before we go there, are there any questions or comments on what we just went through?
Even just one thought that is, I would like to see whether there are I will say 4 to 6 use cases that are the dominant use cases for ONOS that we are wanting to continue to make sure that happens. There are 3 versions of COD: residential, enterprise, and say mobile. Then there is the packet optical use case, SD and IP peering use case. So those are on my mind. There are 5 or 6 use cases that are the dominant use cases that are driving ONOS forward. So in this planning, if there is a representative from each one of those use cases, and that is trying to say that, hey, for my use case to progress, here are my requirements, and those requirements play into the priority setting, that will be very helpful. Because end of the day, ONOS is like a platform. Platform enables use cases and solutions, and those solutions requirements should be driving some of the priorities. Some priorities we know that we have to support those features or capability, but others should be driven by that. And so I don't know, for those 3 core use cases and packet optical and SD and IP peering, who can be the spokesperson who can bring crisp requirements and prioritization of them.
So good point. Thank you for bringing it up. So I think, from my perspective, it's pretty clear that eCord and IP optical is Mark, that our cord is all E, that MCORD is ping ping and SDNIP is ping ping. So I think those are the right people to bring those issues and requirements in.
Yeah, on the MCORD side, I'm not sure if really, we need to think about people who really understand mobility a little bit, in terms of bringing requirements into the place. Maybe from execution perspective, we can have multiple people. For example,
So we're not planning MCORD in here, right?
but ONOS does need, MCORD does need some new apps for network slicing that needs to go into the ONOS.
And those apps would be built by the MCORD team.
We're talking about
Yeah,
ONOS
it's,
platform.
We're talking about ONOS as a
The
platform,
core
right?
Subsystems.
So
Yeah,
applications that use ONOS would be written by the team that is driving that particular use case.
So, but I guess what, let me see whether Tom's point was made, right? What he's saying is, Ping may not be the person who can be that spokesperson from the MCOD to bring the requirements. If that is the point, then who should that be? Because you are deep into MCOD. Who is that one person who can bring those requirements if Ping is not the right spokesperson?
So I'm thinking for now, this next stage might be somebody like Morat from Argela, because he's going to be porting that changes to, the concept of virtualization of the ONOS maybe has to impact the tenancy at ONOS, ability to bring capabilities for network slicing,
So
similar
Tom,
resource management.
maybe Bill had a point. We should take it offline and decide who that person is, because that is one aspect of MCOD. And as you said, Ping may not be the person who will understand the mobility. And I don't know whether I have not interacted with Murat enough to know that he understands MCOD broadly. So we should take it offline.
Should definitely do that.
But we need a person who can be a spokesperson for that.
Yeah, I
Sure.
guess I'd like to participate in the discussion of SDNIP at least as well.
Yeah, I would think so too.
Deployed.
That is what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
That, on the deployment front,
Yep.
maybe Luca is the one that is a lot more plugged into that than Ping at this point. But that is my impression. It may be wrong.
Well, along with Ping, of course.
Okay.
I mean,
Alrighty. So any other comments or questions?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not sure like the work I'm doing if really fits with the ONOS core platform, considering that I'm developing both southbound support, experimental southbound support for new type of devices, and also demo applications. So, or should I like proceed? Should I like insert my task into the ONOS sprint, or consider whatever?
So we
is
could
being
look
told?
at we can look at you in two ways. One is we can look at you as creating a southbound provider. It's going to be a part of the general platform, right? And in which case you're just working out of the same backlog as this team.
Okay.
Or you could also behave as an external entity, much as a Huawei is creating an ISIS plugin for ONOS. So,
Multiple choices.
so I mean, either way can work, right?
All right.
Right. To the extent that you're very independent,
Mhm.
I would suggest the one that's more like Huawei. To the
Yes,
to
I
the
would
extent that
recommend
you're
that.
really closely tied with maybe some changes in the provider, yeah, then maybe you want to tie in with the
All right.
Sprint.
Yeah, so if you need core platform changes,
Mhm.
then the right place to do them is in this group. If it's mostly external applications or new southbounds that can just leverage the platform, then you could run independently.
Gotcha.
Okay. Good question. Thank you. Okay. All right. Let's start. Subin, you're up. The next 3 weeks. Are there bugs
Yes,
that
we
you
already
feel
put
are
on
very
to the-
very important for? Okay. So are they in Jira, and are they at the top of the list of bugs?
If you look, should we bring it up or should?
Sure, we can bring up the. Yep. That's a good idea to bring it up. Okay. Jira. Login.
So one caveat we want to bring in is that when we put the bug in the sprint, we don't have the visibility to assess the developer who need to help on solving the bugs. So the amount of resource needed maybe, we need to somewhat do a check and balance on it. Black screen. Let's go down.
So yeah,
Can I ask? So, I was out of the office for a couple of weeks. I came in, I had no clue what green, black, and gold meant.
well, that'll teach you a
Not
little.
even the people that were in the office.
It's completely non-descriptive. Like, can we make this a little bit more tangible?
Well, something
my
that
instinct was like, we're gold. I mean, we're
Me too.
the crop and everything else.
Me too. So they went black.
so one thing that we wanted to do right is to have a sprint that would track the work being done by ON.Lab on the core platform, right? So it's not necessary. So I think one thing we should probably get on the same page about is that I think Thomas, you described this as being feature based. We may want to consider doing it, or at least the vision that I've had, or the way it's been sort of described to me, is that it's more people based. But we should get on the same page about what these mean, and the colors are somewhat arbitrary, right? Like maybe what we should do is take a step back and just to, like talk about what sprints we want to run and what we want to call them.
Well, so the whole point of calling it a symbolic name was not to get hung up on features.
Mhm.
And it really should be just a group of people who have, a Scrum is a group of people who have a self-contained group of people who have a common mission and common objective, and generally a fairly singular objective. So, that's not necessarily what we have here, right? We have people who have different objectives sometimes at a macro level. So whether or not we put us under one sprint or sprints, I don't think that's a detour that we don't think need. I wouldn't get into it. I would just call call in colors, and then we can rename them later on. Right now, I wouldn't worry about it.
Right. I mean, like, can we call it internal and external?
Yeah, I'm
Just
okay
to
with
simplify.
like, having different
That
sprints and
has
different
other connotations.
groups.
Yeah.
But I don't know what they mean.
Okay,
So we have people.
we'll,
Yeah.
so we'll come back to that. right? It's a little bit of a orthogonal though, right, to this. So our goal is to look at our entire ONOS backlog from different from different functions perspectives, right? The first perspective is from a QA perspective,
Sure.
right? So in the backlog, what are the top 1, 2, 3, 4 bugs, right, that we need to think about doing in this sprint?
So we prioritize those bugs we think that we should try and resolve or fix within the sprint.
Okay,
Uh,
that's this set of 7.
yes.
Okay,
Should I go through the detail or
No.
this how? No.
I just if people can look at and read it. If there's a question, they can ask now. But okay,
But like I mentioned earlier, the only things that's unknown is that how much developer resource will this set of bugs
Yep.
track them into it.
okay. So we'll come back to
But these are in priority order, Stephen? Or are they just
Somewhat not, but
Not strict.
it. Okay, put them in your priority.
we
order,
can put it
please.
in priorities.
Okay, good. All right. All right. Okay. Okay, so. Okay, fine. Okay, deployment.
Can you
Are yours in Jira or?
Yes.
Okay, great.
please go in Jira and click on top right on production. Just do show more, please, and then okay, I kept them in the backlog just because they are not on me, so I didn't know how much effort could be spent on those, so are still in the backlog. Can you please go down in the backlog?
Oh, so they're not, so what are these that are in the sprint?
Huh?
So what are the things that are in the sprint?
Well, the things that I can do,
Oh, okay.
but I couldn't decide for it.
Okay, so those are all things you're going to do. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Right.
So the things that in terms of developing effort that I'm blocked by is essentially using the intent framework. The next thing is briefly deploy together as DNIP and VPLS. So give layer 2 and layer 3 connectivity. And to do that, there are few things that needs to be addressed that goes from, are the first 3 stories in the sprint. In the backlog at the top. And they go in order more or less of priority, in the sense that one wants the other more or less in order to work. So I'm not sure which one goes first. It's more up to Brian or who does that, but that's it.
Okay, so which ones would you like to be considered in this sprint?
Well, for me, from the point of view of the deployments, the real story that matters for me is the 4th one, right? But to do the 4th one, all the first 3 needs to happen. So it doesn't really matter. It's more up to Brian how much energy he can spend into that. Well, I'm saying Brian just because he owns the intent framework, but whoever can take it.
So just humor me for a minute. So you want this 4th one, right?
Yes,
And
that's a big story.
so you
right?
want to pull that one up in, but did you just say that
It's
that
blocked
can't-
by the.
It's blocked by the first 3.
right?
Yeah.
So, okay, so then I guess I should ask Brian, is if we brought some of these up, which ones would be the ones to consider doing first? Are they in the right order?
So I think the 2nd and 3rd are probably the next two that would make progress on this issue.
But the first one is kind of almost solved.
Multi-VLAN support, where you want to be able to.
Well, what we did the other day, right? We done 10 here and then 20, 30, 40, 50.
All right, so I'm gonna pull those 2 up. All right.
That's possible.
Okay. Well, okay. Yeah.
Sure.
Whatever
We
you
can
feel
pull them up for now.
comfortable with.
Yep.
And
Okay, and just in a nutshell, those 2, for everybody's edification, what would those 2 do for us? Or do for Luca?
so
Thanks, Bill.
so one of the for the multi-point and single-point intents, we are dropping the treatment that the requester is putting on the intent. And so this would enable a custom treatment, which is required for the VPLS application, to be put on multi-point to single-point and single-point to multi-point intents. And the second one, the point-to-point intents, is a question of when the treatment gets applied. Right now, we apply the treatment on ingress, and doing so breaks the match criteria in the core for the VPLS application. So it actually needs to be applied on egress before the packet's pushed out. So basically, it's 2 changes. The first one's more of a bug. The second one's more of a feature request. But it's 2 changes to the way the intent framework compiles intents, such that they meet the requirements of an application head considered before.
Okay. Good.
Is that what you were?
Yep. All right. So Luca, would that be good? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Thanks.
Yep. All right. So, Thomas and TST, what do you think is important for engineering to focus on?
What does this category mean?
So maybe we ought to do it last. But I mean, the other ones are all kind of externally impinging upon the engineering team and requesting cycles and deliverables, but then the engineering team also has a set of things that they're trying to accomplish, whether it's spring cleaning or other.
So one thing I'd have here is the bug build, so that it's usable by developers, is very close to being ready. So getting over the last 1 or 2 hurdles to put Buck in the hands of developers, I think would be something we want to do.
Okay. And I want to run a Gary validation. Start running both Maven and Bug, and then hopefully soon just Bug. Gary validation.
Okay. And are those in Jira today?
Yes.
We do have some stories in there. Yeah. There's an epic, a buck epic.
I found a strange Garrett validation in production, under infrastructure. So maybe it was you that told Thomas.
What?
I found a story
Yes.
in ON.Lab infrastructure,
Sure.
and I didn't know how it came there. So I don't know even who was on. So I don't know if
You can just leave it there. It's, right. We can move it later.
okay.
Okay, so are these
These
the
are not
ones?
prioritized, and some of them actually.
I was gonna
should
say
be
they're
closed.
done, right?
Yeah.
4330 is basically done.
4330.
I'll mark it as done.
Refactor bug to use 4331 should probably be closed.
Not
Core
quite yet.
features not
Let's start
quite
with
yet.
you. Let me finish those and do that.
4340 is done, right?
4340.
That's the features.
Oh,
The features is done
Yes.
for now.
why? Oh, okay, so that one can only go up now. Okay. All right. So this one?
4344 is done.
I'll mark it as done so you can refresh.
Okay, so what dragged up into the sprint?
We need to add box swagger target. That's a 4343.
That's not strictly
It's
required.
unclear
Though.
that's required though.
I think they're actually the stories we want for the sprint are not in
4344,
Jira yet. There's,
Okay.
I think three items that at least I see that we don't have stories for that I'd like to promote above the backlog that would get.
Okay, can you quickly add those while we move on to a different
So-
topic?
4340. So 4343 should be moved up. Even though we can say that it, 4344, which is ONOS bug for ONOS package.
Yeah,
It's almost done, but it's not.
Should be moved up. All right.
So there are a couple of stories in ONOS core that I would like to be included. And
Okay. So let's see. Let's go.
so they're already
We're moving stuff into gold sprint or black sprint.
black.
It wouldn't let me put it in black, so
Okay, that's fine.
sorry.
We can move it later.
So
It's a Parthian Jira.
Or rename them.
Okay, so which one?
4281 is something Show has been working on. This is important because right now the way we register new resources is very inefficient, and we have observed some stability issues when running with large topologies, and I think it is important that we fix that.
Okay, so 4281.
Yeah. And 4425 is another improvement.
Does this go in black or gold?
So it is already in black, by the way.
It should be gone.
Oh, it is in black.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. It's at the top of black.
And 4425 is something that was partially done last sprint. This is important because there are a couple of APIs in leadership service which are inefficient, and we want to deprecate their usage with a suitable replacement. And again, this is important from a stability standpoint. And there are a bunch of they are not features, but they are regressions that I would like to see fixed. And I think some of them are mentioned by Suvin when he talked about the bugs.
And are they already showing as part of the?
I see
They are showing
Three of
if
them.
you assign it to you.
Are these everything that you are talking about, or are there
Yes.
more?
There's a performance regression bug that's
I don't see that here.
not in.
Is it
Or
It's
under a
not
different
being
epic?
assigned to you.
Yeah, let me move it. Okay.
You can refresh that if you want.
So you just moved it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right. And anything else? ONOS core, northbound, southbound.
Are there network virtualization stuff, Thomas?
Well, that's why I was just trying to think. Brian is still working on it, but he's pretty close. So I think we should just leave him finish the virtual network provider implementation.
Would that be included in this final session?
Well, that's a good question, whether it should be or not.
I think so.
Okay, then let's just include it.
Yeah,
I've
just
actually-
like shows
I
what it would be.
have Brian online here, so
Yeah.
I'll omit him.
Okay, so is there already a Jira issue around that
Yeah,
work?
there is a macro issue. That's the 21 pointer. It's the 3633.
Okay, so is that already in the sprint?
It's not in the sprint. I'm gonna drag in the sprint, but I want.
All right.
This was created as an umbrella.
We're
which
gonna
is
have
why
to break
this-
that one down.
What?
Yeah, we'll have to break that
Well,
one down.
that means it's already been broken down by other things. So, yeah, let me talk to him, and we can plan it. We can put it in there later.
Okay, so let's move on. All right, Guru. You're the closest thing we have to a product manager.
So I guess I might have missed something because I'm not necessarily able to see everything, but I'm kind of a little bit surprised on the engineering side. I didn't see any item that are related to maybe slicing, virtualization, intent. I only heard in response to what Luca is asking for. Again, I'm coming to the sprint planning after a long time. I don't know, but if somebody had asked me before I walked into the sprint planning, Guru, what will be the 3 or 4 items that will be on the ONOS team's top of the list? I would have thought significant improvement to intent framework, addition of virtualization and slicing, and they are not even figuring out in. So
So the virtualization work is continuing. That's under the
So but I thought if it is continuing, so maybe the last item that you just discussed, maybe it covers it all. And
Well,
if that
no,
is-
it doesn't cover it all, but it should cover the virtualization aspect of it.
So we've never seen a document to review about it, right? Virtualization, is that true?
No, we
or-
reviewed it 2
we
weeks
did?
ago
Okay.
with yeah.
So
Did you see it?
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I'm not. And again, it's not that not seen it meaning I might have been invited to TST meeting and I have not been able to attend the TST meeting, and that is it's like possible. I mean, I suppose that's what happened, but so it's not like my priority. But what I'm saying is that my understanding is that what ONOS top 3 things are. On the top end, getting the intent framework to deliver on the promise that we have articulated, then virtualization and based on our conversation multiple times, slicing is like a subset of virtualization of some type. So, and that's not figuring significantly in our planning. So,
Well, so there's a couple of things. So the virtual network work is progressing. There's sprint cleaning activities, basically revamping our overall build process because we're losing a lot of time right now by basically doing 93 to 95% of the work that's getting done during building is completely wasted, burning a lot of developers' time. There is a huge multiplier effect. So for that reason, we decided to address that, and that work is nearly finished. On the intent framework, that basically got way later. The intent domain work. And in lieu of that is basically the intent framework, the rework and the virtualization were coupled. We uncoupled them because there were objections to coupling them. And the intent domain work is going to have to basically wait till next release to the agents.
Thomas, sorry. It's really in the good sense what I'm saying. Where the requirement for the intent domain comes from?
The requirement. Okay, so there's no requirement per se. Well, at least, but
I'm saying,
there is requirement really. The requirements are indirect. Intent Framework 1.0 is structured in a certain way. it has limitations. I can go through the details of those limitations right now if you want, but I think that's
So,
probably
so
not the scope of the meeting.
let me pop us up for a minute. So we're starting to talk about trade-offs and which ones we want to see,
Exactly.
right? And preferably, we would just get the items first injected in, right? And then we can talk about which one is most important. So what I heard Guru say is he really wants to see some work around slicing, right? So we ought to add that as an item in here if it's not already covered in the JIRA that's covering virtualization. If it's already covered in there, fine. But
So the work on virtualization, it's proceeding forward. It's not in an ideal form, because an ideal form actually would be coupled to the interdomain framework, to interdomain work, because it's underneath. It's the same mechanisms. I mean,
so I think of slicing as something separate from virtualization. Do you think of it as something separate or something?
it's actually the same thing.
It's the same. Okay.
Same thing.
I think what I understood last time when we had the elaborate discussion on it, that there is a way to do virtualization that can enable you to get a virtual network and run a controller on top of it. So the southbound to that controller may or may not be open.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So if the virtualization path that we are on allows me to get committed resources on my virtual network and I can run a controller on top for that virtual network, then perfectly okay. And that is the path we are on. Great. Hopefully, but again, what I'm saying is that Thomas, you're saying the work is continuing. But if I were to just look at the sprint, the items that we are adding to the thing, I see such a small. I mean, I don't know what did we add to the sprint that gives us the confidence that this is a high priority and we are going to put in the effort. Unless you tell me that, hey, this sprint it is a cleaning.
I mean,
that is the decision that is collectively made. I didn't hear that.
Well, we need to finish it.
Well, we haven't got to that discussion yet.
Yeah.
Right? We're not talking about right now we're just talking about what you'd like to see prioritized.
Yes.
Ah,
And so the reason it isn't prioritized because we're finishing cleaning and first of all, it is prioritized. It's just maybe not prioritized as high as the original envision. But the work on virtual networking is proceeding with the help of Sienna and with our guidance, from myself and Brian. And also, we're working on basically on some of the spring cleaning, not nearly all of it, but on some of the most important parts of the spring cleaning.
And the intent word is another. So maybe going back to Bill's process, what I'm asking is from priority or whatever you want to say, virtualization and in parentheses include slicing, make it explicit, and the second thing is intent.
So,
and the only other thing I will add in terms of the priority from my side is because we are going to AT&T, there will be some work involved in getting ready for it, and that will become more clear in our tomorrow meeting. So that's all I will say.
So,
and then the priority we will get from E-card, N-card, and whatever R card.
So perhaps what we should do in response to Guru's points is we should either identify a story or that there are tasks that would go towards moving the intent framework and virtualization forward.
Yes.
That we should consider when we get to a point where we have too much stuff. Right.
Yes.
So we haven't yet talked about the prioritization. I think the conversation has kind of gone off into the why we don't have stories yet for them. But really, in response to this, we really should have a story.
Yes.
Whether one is in JIRA or not yet is.
Yes. Yeah, so that's what I was expecting to see.
Mm-hmm.
So I heard that there were stories around slicing virtualization, and we look at those in a priority context in a minute.
Yes.
What I'm not clear on, though, is what in what you're looking for in the intent framework that may or may not be in JIRA. So can you just say one level deeper of what things?
Because there are the thing we have said. I mean, maybe I'm at a conceptual level, but all along what we have said is that we can give you very high level abstraction. Multiple applications can use that abstraction, and we'll take care of it. That has been our promise from the first release of ONOS, right?
Yes.
And what I'm noticing is that, and this is something we've talked about, many applications or use cases are not using intent. And when they're not using intent, they are saying, they are complain, I don't know what the right word is. They're saying, oh, here is this limitation or that limitation or that limitation. And so what I understood last time was only SDN IP peering,
MBPLS.
sorry,
MBPLS.
are the ones that are using intent. Nobody else is using intent.
We actually, at the hackathon, we started this.
Okay.
The MEF
So that's what I'm
with that
saying.
intent.
So are we doing enough of the intent framework that becomes our default API for all our use cases?
I think we ran, yeah, so this is a good question. I think that the problem here is that the way the current API is set up and the way the interfacing between the applications and the intent framework and the way the current implementation of the intent framework is set up is a little bit limited. And we basically ran out of room. And so what this is going to require is basically intent framework 2.0, compatibility breaking change in API, which allows applications to negotiate more with the intent framework about what it is that they want. So rather than being black and white, I want this, no, you can have it, or yes, you can have it type of a thing, which is all or nothing. There needs to be sort of a back and forth, more like when you're traveling, when you're arranging a trip to, like, let's say, New Jersey, right? You may need to figure out when you can leave. And things like that.
Right. So what I'm saying is that I have no issue with what you're describing,
Yeah.
and I can understand that. But that is such an important aspect of ONOS because end of the day, everybody interfaces to ONOS through intent. So that is to me a very high priority item that we should be pushing to realize that potential.
Yes, unfortunately, it's been getting displaced. Activity like this requires sort of sufficient concentration of force, and we've been lacking it since really the EMU release. And it's sort of depleted. The pool of resources to work on has been sort of watered down, and then the issue is we haven't been very good at making sure
Again,
we
that's what we're
preserve
trying
that.
to fix to some extent. So
Yeah.
as we are in the process
Yes.
of fixing it, I'm just adding back that as a high priority item because Bill is asking me. He ordered me to be here. So, so I'm making
No,
my contributions.
Yes.
But
You-
Tom, you say there's not enough people working on it, but then you also say, but in 10 domains, you're thinking of that. Is that going to solve the staffing and manpower issue?
No. So the
How is
intent
that-
domains is the approach, right? Intent domains is the approach. It's not the solution to the problem that we have in terms of the prioritization. So, I mean, yeah, like I said, it's the issue. I don't think is with a technical approach. The issue is with prioritization of resources to work on. There's
But you're
always something
saying,
else
well,
that's diluting it. There's
You're
either
saying once we
ONS
start
or
in that domain, then
or there's-
we'll put it back on high priority. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the intent domain is the means through which we would like to accomplish version 2.0.
Thomas, can I make a comment?
Yes.
I sort of been watching like where we are going with our primitives and intent framework a little bit at that. I'm not sure if this is a one-person thing, right? I mean,
No, that's
No,
my
no,
point.
let me-
It's not
let
a
me
one-person
finish.
thing.
Right.
That's a concentration of force.
So there are requirements from policy, there are requirements from NEF, there are policies from multiple mobility, M-core, slicing, and all of that. And I'm not sure if this needs a task force that they need to go define what those primitives are to support all these different vertical markets, and then maybe turn that into a right resources to implement.
But the
it.
thing
I mean,
is,
that's
Tom, we
even
have a
broadening
great
the scope.
primitive, the intent framework, right? We have a great primitive.
We have a
The issue is
connectivity.
that even that
Only
single primitive is not being
We don't
getting the
have
attention.
QoS support. We don't have.
I mean,
all the
It's basically, what you're suggesting is even broadening the scope further. That would actually probably be what we don't want to do, at least not initially, because that would increase the scope, blow the scope even of this exercise even more. We already have a pretty good idea about what's the issue is with today's framework, what the limitations are, and how to address them. We just simply have not reached or haven't made the priority, I guess, to dedicate certain minimum number of individuals, certain amount of brain power to this task for certain contiguous amount of time to be able to tackle it. It's not something that can be. I mean, even if you think to the Avoset days, it took a room of 3-4 people to try to come up with with effective way of dealing with the intent framework in the closing days of our set. And so we've been making incremental changes to the evolutions, like porting it to flow objectives or making enhancements to the resource subsystem and things like that. So there's incremental changes being done to the intent framework, but the problem is we're constrained and we really can't make many more changes within the confines of the way the things are done today.
So here's
one question I could ask you.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Could we then take it as an item in this sprint is to get back to an agreed set of activities around northbound that we're all in agreement? Because we're starting to kind of talk about that, right?
Yes, but that would run a risk of, I think we need to finish the bug stuff. That needs to be finished.
So I think what this comes down to is the reason why you haven't heard from me or Thomas, we want to work on Intent 2.0, is because, like, I think I've been somewhat involved in Intent 2.0, I've been somewhat involved in Buck, and I've been extremely involved in Intent Framework bug fixes. And so, at least from my perspective, I think the highest leverage in the near term is for me to focus on spring cleaning items. And the second thing is that we've got a number of deployments that have immediate support requirements from our existing stuff. And so while I'm dedicated as the old 1.0 existing Intent Framework resource and someone who's dedicated towards making the platform more user-friendly, developer-friendly, usable, I don't have any cycles to spend on beyond what I can sort of help Brian and the Sienna guys with on network virtualization. I don't have any cycles to spend on 2.0. And so unless we determine as a group that this is a priority for us and we're going to descope some of the other stuff, then like we could say, forget any support on 1.0, leave that to another partner or someone else, and then it's gonna trash a lot of our deployments, which is fine if we want to decide that as an organization.
So to me is 2.0. This is on
or give 2.0 to someone else and say someone else can.
Compatible.
Well, sorry.
Or you're going to deprecate 1.0 as soon as 2.0 is there, and then 1.0.
Well, as Thomas said, there's going to be some incompatible API changes. So
that's okay. I
but part of the work would be to retrofit the few applications that use today's framework to make up for it, of course. But we do need to break the chain.
So, sorry, the point I was trying to make before is that I guess I'm almost with SDN IP, the only one that continuously use the intent framework, right? Mm-hmm. And you tell me, as I know, as we all know, it has, of course, limitations, right? And so I come out with the intent framework 2.0. That I remember, we never talk about it. So I'm just trying to make sure that with 2.0, the problems that I face every day with applications, that seems also other people face, get solved, right? Because as you say, the resources are not a lot. So I may be fine if also other are to say, let's stop for a second with deployments, let's make something that really work for future deployments for the benefit of everyone. But we need to make sure that we cover the basic things, right? Not that the intent domains go in one direction and me with deployments I go in the other one. And I'm not saying that you are wrong. I may be wrong and we may just go in two different directions.
I think you have intent framework that works with caveats today and limitations. We should address the defects with it as much as we can.
Yes.
If we can, hopefully, as much help as we can get from our partners, that's great. But like I said, that work is only incremental and will not address some of the fundamental issues. And
because the question is, I'm not listening to maybe Luca and so on. What would happen? I'm responding to Brian's question. What would happen is, say, we are done with 1.0. We are not going to put any more energy into 1.0. We are committing to 2.0. ON.Lab team is committed to 2.0, and here is the time frame in which we will deliver 2.0. Why not? I mean, I think ONOS is still in early days. If we get so constrained by whatever our short legacy, then imagine how we are going to. So what will happen if we do that? I mean, who is going to scream and shout besides Luca maybe?
No, but I don't, right? I just want to make sure that at some point we match with the same goal in the same
Sure, but
place, right?
I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's the 1.0 work that's stopping us from doing 2.0. It's other
That's
stuff.
what I heard from Brian.
It's other stuff. It's one
So
contributing factor.
for example, in the sprint scope already, we already have 8 points worth of stuff assigned to me on old intent framework between bugs and feature deficiencies for Luca's deployments. So 8 points, if we talk about it, is about half of my development time over the next sprint, right? So right there, that's a big chunk of work that is that I mean, I'm happy to say if someone else wants to take the 1.0 stuff or the 2.0 stuff, I'm happy to give away either or both of those.
So what will happen, Luca, if all the 1.0 stuff is not done by us, or we advertise it to the world saying, hey, can somebody do this, while someone who is so precious like Brian is focused on 2.0?
Sure, but again, I'm fine to. I use lots of fantasy to do something else in the deployments, right, and do other stuff. But I need to. I guess we all wish to have a sort of guarantees that in 6 months, in one year, I don't know when, but at some point we arrive to a point where I can almost promise to people, we will deploy you something, right? And there's a reason because you are holding.
I mean, look at it. I mean, our track record is pretty good actually. So let's not get that pessimistic, right?
No.
So what I'm trying to say is that can we make I don't know whether this is the right forum to make this decision or not. What if we say we are done with 1.0? Let's all work in intent should be on intent 2.0. Define it, what it is, write a document, and then get to it.
I mean, if we go through the planned activities that we had today, right? I mean, this step is to gather inputs from everyone.
Yep.
I mean, the next step is to actually prioritize.
Yep.
If we strongly feel that 1.0 falls below 2.0, then that is what gets worked on, right? I mean,
Okay.
for that we probably need to go to the next step where we actually do the ordering.
Okay.
What about your work, Mark? It would be.
Yeah, but I'm building on the intent framework as it is today. Many people also approach me, in Packet Optical especially. They use intents to drive their network equipment, not to interface with their networking equipment eventually. So if I have to tell them, well, in 6 months you're gonna have to do it all over again because if you guys gonna break, that's.
But you think it should be done everything all over, or it's
I don't know. No one knows. That's the
right.
thing,
That's the thing, right? That I said
it's
we
like
should
when
talk.
is it done? I don't know. What it's gonna look like?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's
What
I'm
are we
saying.
talking about?
But that's
I know
I'm
what the
saying.
intent frameworks looks like. But I guess many people have an understanding of what the deficiencies are today. Or are we not just fixing
But I
it?
think
Just
would
moving
we
on.
all agree that for any platform, the northbound API is so important that we should have some very concentrated effort to evolve it and share it with the community?
Well, I mean, we can certainly take time and write all the deficiencies with today's framework and why we feel that it's not a way to go forward. We can certainly do that. We put an item for it and do that. And then we can follow on, we can present what we feel is a solution to the problem. We've actually done that last fall, but that's okay. We can do that again.
It's one of those kind of long, kind of difficult and lengthy design tests, which doesn't always fit well into the sprints.
So
I mean, the nice thing about the sprint process, right, is that you have a task. It's 3 or 5 points. You say, I'm going to sit down for a couple days or a week, and I get it hammered out, and I'm fairly confident that at the end of that period, I have something done. So you have something that you can show in the demo, and it's great. But something like this, like Bob said, you may spend a couple weeks thinking about it, talking to people, gathering requirements, and at the end of that, you may have little to show for it. And from our perspective, like nothing got done on that story, so that story falls off the backlog.
Oh, but that is something we should be able to react to and fix that issue, right?
So, I mean, I kind of disagree because even if you had a wide open amount of time, there's going to be something you do first for the next 3 weeks, right? And that's your time box activity, and whatever you learn in that 3 weeks,
You present it, and
that's what's presented, right?
Sure.
You time box the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Right. So don't let the agile process be an enemy of doing design, right? Because I don't agree with that.
It hasn't been prioritized, but I agree that I think that's a good idea to actually have them present designs and have. I mean, it is going back to the waterfall model in some sense, but some stuff does actually need to be designed. And even if it's the design is writing prototype code, that can still be sort of explained. And I think it's good to present stuff and get feedback on it for sure. Especially things that we think are important and that actually need to be designed well, like the intent framework. Well, like everything really, but like virtualization is one example, intent framework is another. I think kind of an ongoing design and implementation and review process is a good idea. And getting feedback from multiple people is a good idea too.
All right.
I think this falls on multiple people. This is not a single person task.
Okay, so let's keep moving and get to the point where we can talk about priorities. One thing Brian said that I want to capture, and it brings us into the community, is whatever we decide. I mean, again, this is for ON.Lab resources, and all these things that we're feeling bad or falling off our plate, right? That's for the community to, right? We get a wonderful community available to us, so let's get them more engaged in some of those things, right? Okay.
Oh yeah. So speaking of, although we said that, if I understood it, that's outside of the scope of this meeting, but I would say a big priority would be how do we take those opportunities and provide more clarity to the community about them. But it sounds like we're talking about that separately from this.
I'm not sure what you're saying. So are there things that you think would help our community efforts, where you'd like to see some specific help from the engineering team?
Yeah, so one is the road mapping that you were alluding to.
Okay.
Like we as an engineering group need to figure out what that public roadmap is. Although I don't know if that's part of this scope of this meeting.
It is because
Like,
it's
sure.
really human
Documentation.
resources, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So actually another thing though, David is not talking, I'll say today we heard from Patricia, the survey that came back.
Yeah.
Just talked to whatever 25 of our community people, right? And that feedback has come back, and that feedback will require all of us to react, and so we will need people's time
Absolutely.
in order to prepare for that feedback and how we are going to reorganize to deal with that some of those points.
Absolutely.
So that should be part of this sprint, right?
So can we all see the feedback results?
Oh yeah, of course.
We're collating and we're putting it in place.
I mean, unless you want to read 30 pages of raw thing, and then David is going to put it together in a form that will be specific.
Okay, just to clarify what I was saying about the roadmap, though, you were saying there's a separate process that we need to put together to figure out what the community-wide process is. That's why I was wondering if this was kind of a separate discussion or not. But absolutely, the roadmap to be disseminated. And then to Guru's point, looking at and helping plan for addressing the issues that have come up in this community feedback process. And then the ongoing work that we've been doing to do the next phase of the modular system. Those would be my top three.
Okay.
Sorry, module owner is something that you say, I want to do, but it reflects on Brian, right? Sorry, I'm just saying that because Brian is one and we just put on him another task again.
Well, this is the engineering part of it. There are some non-engineering
of course, but I'm
points around
saying
it.
just to know, is that the time that you are taking from Brian at this point, or?
He doesn't necessarily, I mean, you had mentioned earlier, if I remember, that perhaps one of the interns could take some of that.
Yeah.
But that might be out of it.
That's something that we could hopefully get help from an intern for, or, I mean, again, a lot of this stuff is, I'm happy to push off, not push off, but help spin up someone else to
But
do, right?
the key word is spin up, so it will not be free.
Yeah.
Bill, I put 2 stories for virtual network. There are 13 points worth. Those were the 2 that fell under the 21 point umbrella.
Okay.
To go back to the module owner, and maybe this is jumping into the priority discussion, I would point out that this is enabling us to bring in many more people throughout the code base that will let us hand off more of our work if we have more visibility into where the review process is working, where we can bring more people in. So this is something that will have a nice return on investment.
So Bill, before you go into the event, how are you going to get the feedback from the use cases part. I mean, maybe today we don't have the representatives, but I think we have Mark and we have maybe Tom or Ping Ping is also here now. So how do you get feedback from those use cases?
So there should be JIRA issues written up when there are requirements, right, for something in the northbound or something in the southbound from one of those teams, right? And there should be discussions that are being had, right? And then that JIRA issue should just be made visible in this planning session and put in the appropriate place, right?
Okay.
So Ping Ping, if you have a requirement on some of the core infrastructure for ONOS, if you need something different out of the northbound, or if you need something different out of the distributed core, right? The expectation is that you would write a JIRA issue around that, right? And then in our sprint planning session, you could talk about, the priority and the need for that.
We will pre-discuss what's the physical requirement and decide what needed to do from other team and should we do for MCOT. We will do that. They normally do that.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think build to Guru's point. I mean, initially when we started the M4, I know you guys, the ONOS team were very busy and we didn't get the attention that we really needed. Obviously, I was understood that it was very busy. But honestly, right now, I feel that there's a lot of requirements that we have somehow embedded in Young's head and other folks that are working in code and all of that. We need to get Larry, Thomas, Ali, these guys, Brian involved and sort of hear these things out, right, from the people who know what they want and all of that. Otherwise, we might just go with some little integration of this vendor and that vendor, etc., and we really don't have anything embedded into the ONOS that says this supports mobility here. So I think maybe it's time to, for example, what Guru said about network slicing is very critical. I think we need to get some of those mindsets. We might not know how to execute, or I don't know how to execute, obviously, on the ONOS side, but having attention from Thomas, Larry, Ali, Brian, these guys.
This is what I suggest, right? So why doesn't MCOT team put together, that's what I have been wanting to do in the MCOT context, right? Why don't we get organized and put requirements? So if we invite.
In recently, there's another requirement.
No, don't tell me one requirement. I'm not looking for one requirement. What I'm trying to say is that is the MCOT team ready to describe the requirement either with examples or with some description that if you invited 4 or 5 people from the ONOS team for 1 hour, you can justify that 1 hour of their time for you to listen to your requirements in a well thought out way with examples and description. So let's do that, right?
We could do that Friday.
Right. So let's not do anything more today, right now. Like what I'll say is that it is on the MCOT team to put together and at least as a sanity check, show those the presentation to me that I can say, oh yeah, it is in a form that makes sense. Or maybe from one person from ONOS team can also do the sanity check to say, yeah, it is in a form that can be presented.
Sure, absolutely.
The original plan this Friday, the requirement document will come out.
Okay. So let's and again remember that ONOS is one, and then you may have requirements on XOS and COD. So we have to separate them and see how we can bring them to the team.
And also how to bring soft rank to the ONOS eventually. What change? I know
ONOS doesn't later. So, but Bill, what I was talking about is in the process form, there should be like you have community, you have whatever. I would like to insert in terms of process the COD's requirements coming in. And today maybe people are not prepared because the process is new. But in the future, there should be at least a placeholder that the COD people can give you the requirements in some priority.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. You got that.
2 things that I added, potentially community-related things, is ONOS paper. We had talked about trying to get an ONOS paper published.
Yeah, I'm just adding.
It's in community, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
So the deadline for that would be in the sprint.
Tomorrow.
If we wanna to get that done, we need to
Yeah,
make
abstract is due
moves,
tomorrow,
and
and
the paper is due next week.
Oh my
Great.
God, next week?
For OSDI.
OSDI.
If we want to do NSDI, it's the end of summer. But we sort of talked about trying to get a paper published. The next opportunity that we were targeting was OSDI, and that's.
The next week looks too difficult.
So again, just
Yeah,
I mean, the
yeah,
deadlines
I
are there,
understand
and we
that,
can priority. The other thing which we had sort of talked about is potentially trying to put together some materials for ONOS bootcamp, which would be useful for interns and also the broader community. Another potential requirement on engineering resources, but we can decide how we want to prioritize that. And the boot camps in the community section.
Yeah, intern boot camp. Okay, good.
Yeah, that may not fall into this sprint per se, but maybe next sprint.
Yeah.
The prep would fall into this sprint.
Yep. Okay, let's see, where are we here? All right, so we got the community covered? Yep.
Yep.
Okay. And people have been adding events, I see, so events and travel. Okay, so I don't think we actually have everything in JIRA that needs to be in JIRA to have the discussion of priorities, so maybe we ought to take a break, get everything put into JIRA, and then reconvene on priorities.
okay, sounds good.
Because I don't want to kind of rush through it and then forget a bunch of stuff, right? And I also want us to be thoughtful about the size of the pieces that we're putting into the different stories.
So really quickly, Simon had to go to a dentist, so he had to leave, but he said he has a story in there on top of the backlog, the implement server side. So I'm just gonna put it in the sprint.
Okay.
Since his work is.
Is that under engineering?
It's.
The GUI enhancements under engineering?
Yeah.
Okay.
It,
Yes.
the share document, if I click on the calendar of today, it opens the PowerPoint of the demo. Is that?
What about it?
Oh, the doc that we're
Yeah.
using here is not in the calendar invite.
Oh, okay.
So I do have the paper in there already, but I didn't put it in the sprint because I wasn't sure.
Okay.
So it comes out the spring.
All right. So any other so I think it probably makes sense to stop here with this meeting and get all of the pieces into in a consumable format that anybody could look at and help with the prioritization. Because I don't think we have that yet. So, okay. Any other input before we break on it? No? Okay. All right. So maybe if the ONOS engineering team can just stick around for a minute, let's talk about getting the stories written in
Oh,
place.
sorry. Do you want to see the use cases? Like Mark?
No, so definitely for me,
Same
it's
approach.
probably